Just to kind of update you on what your president's office is doing. And first, I certainly want to extend to you all to know that, my office is certainly a resource for APAB and MPUs and leadership and citizens and whoever else may need resources at City Hall. So please feel free to call upon me or my office for that. Also, I just want people to know that I do the best I can as being a resource to the city, and I would strongly encourage you, if you're, particularly if you're a Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter user, to follow me one way or the other. I have a page on Facebook, Felicia A. Moore, Atlanta City Council President, because I post as often and frequently and as they're available information related to upcoming meetings of city council, issues of concern, etc. So if you want to kind of keep up with what's going on at City Hall, I try to make that social media platform as a resource to you. What I'm here today to talk about is a proposal that I authored. It is being led by Councilmember Jennifer Ives, the lead sponsor, along with 9 other council members who have signed on to the legislation. And I'm calling it public confidence and accountability legislation. As you all know, we constantly are hearing and probably will hear many more instances where our city charter, our city code, or other rules were either ignored or just totally violated. And what I think is we are missing are the internal controls. We have those controls with our ethics office, and there's specific things that they look at, but things outside of that are not looked at. And I believe that that helps to erode public confidence, which we do not want to do. We certainly want to maintain what we have, and we want to build on others. So one is making sure that people are accountable for following the rules and the laws. And to that end, the legislation is before council is for an Office of Independent Compliance. The independent label has a distinction, and it really is important because in order to build that trust, we feel that the best way to do it is to make sure there is minimal to no influence from the mayor's office or the city council members, so that people feel that over and beyond the elected officials, that there is an opportunity to make sure that our internal controls and accountability are correct. So at this point, the proposal that you see here in this is under review. We held it, we had a work session, and Councilmember I, being the lead sponsor, are in discussions with the law department to change some of the concerns that they had about the original draft. So it's going to probably be a bit different here. I think she's looking at a consolidated board. This one talks about a separate board that would deal just with compliance, similar to that of the ethics board. We're perhaps looking at merging those 2 boards to handle both ethics and compliance for a little efficiency. So that would be a modification from what you have here if that is what the council moves forward on. But this board, just similar to the ethics board, the appointments are made or recommended by outside groups or agencies, and then we, as a council, the mayor, for legal reasons, confirm those people. So that gives it an independence. It gives a compliance officer that works with them or for them, hired by them, independence, and not feeling that the decisions they're making or things they're pursuing can be influenced by the mayor's office or the city council. There may be also some other proposals that make it even more independent, particularly on the ethics side than it is now. So that is pretty much it in a nutshell. I would prefer, make sure that I have adequate time to answer any questions that people have. What I'm here today is, 1, just to make you aware of it. 2, to encourage you to encourage your members, many of which probably are sponsors, to move it forward. We had as I said, we put it in committee. held it for a work session, had the work session. The day before that at the council meeting, there was introduced, and you probably have heard of this, to establish a task force that would look at ethics, transparency, and compliance. And so what I will encourage you to immediately do is to make sure that you keep council members on track to go ahead and move forward with this office and not wait on the task force. Now, I'm hopeful that's not going to come out, but that may be, that's already was mentioned at the work session, that we need to move forward on this. So that is the second thing that's out there, but it is moving forward. It will be held in committee. Hopefully Ms. I will come out with the proposal to make the changes. The council and the committee should be in a position, if not this cycle, definitely by the next, to move it forward, but we need your encouragement to let them know that. And I will open it up to questions.
Okay, questions from the floor? As you approach the mic, please state your name and affiliation.
Sure, Al Bartel, Chairman NPJ. Madam President, this is a timely proposal and is gravely necessary and overdue. And the 3 reference points of independent, my question goes to the reference point of compliance. You know, we've had policy in the past and it was pretty widely communicated, but we didn't have necessarily a mechanism to ensure compliance. I'm not necessarily invoking the language of enforcement, but definitely ensuring compliance. And my question is, will that compliance, creativity, or enforcement be constrained because the money that's going to be used to sustain this office is still going to have to come out of the city budget? Is that a concern?
Okay, so 2 things. One is compliance with enforcement,
Right.
but also with education
Okay.
and advisement. You know, there are so many rules and regulations, and everybody may not be aware of it. We're making department heads, departmental employees aware that there is a code that governs them, the things that they should be aware of. I don't think it should be a gotcha every time.
Okay.
It may be you do something you weren't aware it was in the code.
Okay.
You made aware that it's in the code. Get it right now, Mr. Martell, because the next time you may be fined or something else may occur. So let's just say that compliance has all of those aspects. As it relates to the budget,
Right.
there is another piece that goes with this, which asks for $1.4 million to staff this office. I've told the council, you know, I've made the best proposal I could. They could certainly scale down the number of employees. And then there's another idea I hear floating about how these things would be, how these offices would be funded in the future for more independence. So we'll have to see about that. But when I've heard that concern raised by other members, I have to remind people, and we're still compiling the list, but at this point, I can tell it's about $9 million today
Okay.
that we have spent on legal, outside legal counsel, just in investigating, monitoring, or whatever we're doing, based on some of the issues that we've had with corruption and other things, and it's still counting, the clock is still ticking, and the amount of money is still ticking. So I'm looking to say that this would be something that would help keep us from having to get ourselves in that position. Not only now, but we need to set up and reform the way we do city government for the future.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
I'm Richard Brown, NPU. President Moore, there's no greater friend of the neighborhoods and the citizen participation system in my memory than you. And it's our great pleasure to sit in the seat of the council. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have a kind of a general question about this. It seems to me that compliance and these activities sort of cover at least four categorical areas, which first of which might be thinking particularly about contracts for delivery of services or that sort of thing. That there's a negotiation phase of a contract. There's the legislative phase, which council then gets involved with. There's the delivery of services phase, where the contractor, whoever kind of does, digs a tunnel or whatever they're going to do. And there's the administrative phase, which the executive branch sort of is responsible for. Those four categories. Some of these categories are conducted, the activity is conducted in secrecy, without a lot of disclosure, with less transparency than the public would like. And I know over the years I've listened to you on council, you would like more transparency in certain of these phases, particularly administrative phase maybe, and also negotiation phase of the contract. And even during the legislative phase, you don't get to see all of the nuances. Or a council person, you're no longer a voting council person. But the compliance officer, in order to vet these things, seems to me would have to have extraordinary access to all these phases, would be able to get inside that process, would have the authority to demand, the right to see anything that's going on. That's going to be a tremendous roadblock. There's going to be tremendous roadblocks thrown up against it. How is that handled?
Please. I think you will be pleased to know, and I meant to mention it, but I kind of got to rambling and lost my train of thought, that's being addressed in another area. So let me start there. My office authored, and Councilmember Andre Dickens was the lead sponsor on a piece of legislation. It's already passed by council unanimously. It's already in place. And we established under the auditor's office, the auditor is an independent function. It's a charter independent function. So to keep it independent, the auditor is the one that hires and manages this group of people that we call IPROs. Stands for Independent Procurement Review Officers. These independent procurement review officers start the monitoring the procurement process from the moment of inception all the way through the process. At the end of the process, so through the process they're looking, are there conflicts of interest or things not adding up? It's a lot, they're following it along the way. At the end of the process, when the administration gets ready to say, award this contract to X, Y, and Z, to address the concerns that you hear me at that point saying, I would, as a council member, if it's a contract of $1 million or more, have a report from the IPROs. Can't vote on it unless they have actually reviewed it. Then I can look at that report and I can see where there were deficiencies. So that gives me direction on what questions I want to ask, and also gives the council member something to decide whether this is something they want to support over and above what the deficiency is. Maybe minor, it may be major, but at least we know somebody's looked at it. So when the council has it, they have good third-party review information before they make decisions, because otherwise we don't have the opportunity to do that.
Just one quick follow-up. As council president, do you have the authority to make the determination whether a vote, no vote situation exists in terms of the amount of information that's been provided to council on one of these matters? In other words, have they fulfilled the requirements to disclose?
Well, let's see. They've just started, and I'm anxiously awaiting the first $1 million or more procurement to be sure that it's a part of it. But we have put that, I believe it was a charter amendment, wasn't it, Ms. Casanova? it's in the charter, and I would certainly be the first to be at the mic telling council members you cannot violate the charter by voting on this if it did not have that.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I was just advised that we do have a quorum. Steve, I'm going to ask you to relay your comments, and we will at this point take roll call, and then we will come right back and you will be the first speaker after we get through the first couple of items on the agenda. That's all right with you. And also, we don't have sound, I've been told on the broadcast.
Since you're so nice and respectful, certainly.
Okay, 2019 delegate alternate roll call. MPU-A, Brinkley Dickerson. MPU-B, Richard Raw. Dr. John Mosey. MPU-C, Zach Gober. MPU-D, James Martin. And me.
Please, as your MPU is called, please speak out so we can hear.
Very loudly, please. MPE, Elizabeth Ward.
Sean Green is here as alternate.
Great, thank you, Mr. Ray. MPUF, Debbie Sapinski. MPUG, Ola Reynolds. Sonia Hedges. MPUH, Barbara Hubbard. MPUH, Charles Shelton. MPUI, Eunice Glover. MPUI, Jennifer Freeman. MPUJ, Benjamin Dickerson. Mr. Bartel.
Here.
MPUK, Lita Harmon. MPUL, Yvonne Jones. MPUM, Rashid Muhammad. Rebecca Rice. MPUN, Amy Stout. MPUO, Carl Holt. Marcus Owens. MPUP, Rasheen Hunter.
Here.
Thank you. MPQ, Eric Toomer.
Present.
And David Gabshe Smith. MPUR, Anselina Robinson. Alfred White. MPUS, Chris Brown. Nick Hess. MPUT, Terry Ross.
Here.
Donovan Dodds. MPUV, Columbus Ward Jr. Stephanie Flowers. MPUW, Jack Bremler.
Here.
And Steve Carr.
Here.
MPUX, Michael Hopkins.
Here.
Reuben Birney. MPUY, Chris McWard. MPUZ, Ann Phillips. Here. And Sharita Branch. We do not have quorums.
And we are short two, is that correct? Okay, we will resume back to the avant-garde order.
Thank you. And I'm Steve Carr from W. First, thank you for taking the initiative on this. It's long overdue. I'll get to my question in a moment. I want to bring to your attention the recent Georgia Supreme Court decision regarding the Ethics Board of DeKalb County and former Commissioner Sharon Sutton. So that's very much in flux, and it's my understanding it's in the hands of the state legislature. And it's gone through the Senate in any case. Number two is, I would certainly encourage you all to take any and all recommendations from any groups, but to focus that this is oversight and accountability, and it's not to be a rubber stamp or any kind of political tool for anybody in the administration of this municipal organization. Number three is, I believe Joyce Shepard mentioned the concept of a triage. I think that should be explored. Triage. Somebody comes in with a complaint and figure out where it's going to go. Number 4 is, it was also mentioned at the public hearing passed about the Blue Ribbon Commission recommendations from former Mayor Shirley Franklin, specifically regarding the machinations of former Mayor Bill Campbell. And I would encourage that to be looked at. And getting to my question is, what's different about this legislation as opposed to other legislation, including the Ethics Board?
In my opening comments, I said that the Ethics Board is an independent board, as you all are aware of that. It enforces the standards of conduct, aka the ethics code, and that's all they have purview over, and that's why a lot of people sometimes are frustrated where something may occur and they will go to the ethics board and ask them to look at it. But if it's not under their purview, then they say, well, that's not in our jurisdiction. So this compliance office would be able to handle many things outside of that jurisdiction, as long as it's related to a city code, charter provision, or outside law that governs how we operate.
We also have a state law that cuts both ways, back all ways. It is called Georgia Open Meetings Act and Georgia Open Records Act. Every person in this building and any other political organization takes an oath of office. So those that do take the oath of office, in that oath it says that they will abide by all, emphasize the word all, federal, state, and local laws. And if they don't, like they violate the Open Records Act, they're in violation of their oath of office. And that's a serious crime. Police go to jail for a number of years for writing false reports in violation of their oath of office. They get away with murder.
With respect to the people standing behind you,
Oh, I appreciate you bringing that to my attention.
thank you, Steve.
So I appreciate again your efforts.
Thank you.
Next.
Yeah, my question is with regard to compliance. So generally speaking, when an action is taken that doesn't comply with the city code, as a citizen, I'd like to see sort of two things happen. One is something punitive if that's appropriate to whoever it is that takes the action, but also to see, to the extent that it's possible to do so, that action unwound. That action unwound. So, I mean, that's not always possible because we live in a causal universe, but I know that, so for example, we had that recent incident with Kwanzaa Hall's hiring with the city, and he gave back the money that he received and was no longer working for the city, so that's the full extent to which that could be unwound. We never were able to determine who hired him, which seems rather odd, but presumably whoever did should
Let me use that as an
Yeah.
example, because you also remember it was reported that we were paying the attorneys that outside counsel that investigated it $900 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
In this instance, if in fact we had a compliance office, the compliance officer could investigate it. They have access to records. They have all the things I heard somebody else mention earlier, and they could have investigated. It wouldn't have cost us $900 an hour.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so I guess that was going to be where I was going next, is that in some cases retaining outside counsel is something that city code requires go through a certain specific process, and so if outside counsel is retained and that process isn't followed, how might we go about undoing that retention if work is already been performed?
Well, I mean, I think, the guy with the theory of quantum merit or something, but once people perform a service that you get a benefit from,
Mm-hmm.
you have to pay them,
Right.
essentially. I mean, I think we're legally paid. The question is, and I think that's an area that is on my long to-do list of things to look at, about the whole process of engaging outside counsel and the council having some say in whether or not we even investigate certain matters. So,
But once something like that has been revealed, then presumably you wouldn't want that to continue, the work to continue to be performed.
well, and that where the part about, how does the council, the policymakers engage themselves in that process? Because right now, and in the past, it seemed to be totally driven from the law department. And if it's a request, because that one was requested by the mayor to be had, and the law department has the authority, the city attorney, that's what I'm trying to, has the authority, sole authority to do the outside legal counsel. However, what I'm saying, is if we have the compliance officer, I think we can cut out a whole lot of outside legal counsel bills. And we could also allow them to hire whatever additional resources they need to do it, so that we take it out of that realm. But also, I think in the future, and the council needs to really grapple with how outside legal counsel is, how much it costs, because to me, it's out of control. That's just my personal opinion.
Well, I guess my comment then was that I'd like to see a lot more thought given to how we're going to go about undoing our mistakes once they've been revealed. Because
Yeah, and I don't know that many of them can be undone. But,
to the extent possible.
Okay.
okay.
I have a question, comment, I'm not sure what it really falls under. But it seems to me that all of the tools are in place to accomplish good governance. We have an HR that's supposed to oversee hiring. We have contract officers that are supposed to look over contracts. We have city council. We have the executive branch. And it would seem to me that we should not be, every time something goes wrong, looking to create something new that has loopholes within itself later down the line. That what we should be looking at, what we currently have, and giving them the power or the mandate that they function as they're supposed to and be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. For instance, if you had all of the people that are already on the payroll or already elected mandatorily meet and perform these tasks that we're asking, we don't have another board, another entity being paid, looking at the same things.
So who are those people now? You tell me who they are.
Well, you have the city council, you have, and by name, I don't know them, but you do have a head of HR, do you not? So that
Well, I
person.
mean, HR will continue to
Well,
do HR.
it would seem like that HR had a responsibility to vet the hiring of a person that was not eligible. And they should have known, and they were remiss.
And they were the ones who, at this point violated it. So who holds them accountable after they've done that? Yeah, everybody should do what they're supposed to do. We should not speed when we are driving. We should not go through a stop sign. We should not do anything. But one thing that I do know is if I'm speeding on the highway and I anticipate that there are going to be some cops that are going to catch me on radar and give me a ticket, it may modify my behavior or give me a thought. Right now we have no internal controls and no one to hold people accountable when they don't do what they're supposed to.
And that's exactly my point. That you have these people that are supposed to be doing a job. We are paying them to do a job. We have elected them to do a job.
Yes.
And in some instances, they're remiss, and in some instances, they don't have the information to do the job to begin with. My point is that that is the area that I would think would be more important, that we hold people to task to do what they're supposed to do. Now you say, what will we do because we found out that they did not do what they were supposed to do? Well, when I was in the workforce, if I had too many of those instances, I was looking for a new position.
But somebody held you accountable for not doing that. And that's where we're getting, what I'm getting to. And other cities across the country have compliance and other mechanisms. Most private industry has some sort of compliance officer or internal controls to make sure people follow the rules. So the rules are there. People are supposed to do what they're supposed to do. But if you are in an environment where you're not doing what you're supposed to do, and no one is holding you accountable, and there's no enforcement of that or penalty for not doing it, then you'll continue doing it. And so that's why we're moving to a point where we're wanting to have internal controls, because you know what the answer to not having internal controls are? And that's external controls. It's called the FBI, it's called the GBI, it's called the Department of Justice, the Internal Revenue Service, State Elections Commission. All of these and probably more are at the point of investigating at some level things that have not been done as they should have been at City Hall. What I'm saying is I think we need to be responsible and to work to make sure that in the future, no matter who's elected, not elected, or who's in those positions, are held accountable.
One more point in this, and this is a true question. The makeup of the board, if you will, it has appointees from various components.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we have problems with those appointments being confirmed, or is that correct?
No. At first, this is kind of sought after the ethics board, and at first the council would just allow the organizations to make a point, say like the League of Women Voters or APAB, this is our appointee, and put them on there. But of course, Mr. Carr mentioned the issues in DeKalb County about how the board was constituted, and so the council did change the policy to make sure that they just make recommendations to us, and that the mayor and council go through a formal appointment process.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I don't mean to come up here twice, but
That's all right.
Mr. Coomer has raised some points, and I'd like your comments on the thought that the compliance officer is not necessarily there to identify wrongdoing or willful wrongdoing, but that non-compliance, there can be lots of reasons for non-compliance. And not all of it's willful, some of it's due to just plain, inattentiveness to the details, not really understanding the process, and your point about internal, checks and balances on that, that's in fact what this is. It's almost an assistance to the people who are engaged in these activities that require compliance to make sure that they're doing it right. And it's true the legal department is there, but human beings can only do so much, and they tend to focus on the things that they do the best. A surgeon, is going to find a solution that's surgical all the time, but a compliance officer may have a more broad perspective. So I think, one way of looking at this is that it's a form of assistance to the city government to help all aspects of the city government be more attentive, and it also ends up being an incentive to pay more attention to what you're doing. That's just a comment. I don't know what.
I think I agree with you. I'm distressed to see that somehow hope I didn't kick you all off TV. But I wish so I know I see you all taping it. I don't know how I can get access to it so I can publish it, because I think people need to hear this discussion.
I have one quick question, Madam President. And I think the thing that has been going over and over in my mind is, first of all, we're saying that it's going to cost $1.4 million to establish this office. I guess my question would be, is there any way that that $1.4 million could come from anywhere other than the city of Atlanta? And the reason for that is, I'm supposed to be on a compliance officer for overseeing what's going on in the city of Atlanta as far as contracts and everything else. But my salary is coming from the people that I'm overseen. This has been an issue not only with other compliance offices across the nation, but even the Department of Defense. They have a contract compliance office. Well, these are all attorneys, military people, but they work with these contractors, and over time, they become a little bit less concerned about certain things because of the way the money funnels down. So I would like to see if this would not be a grant funded situation, anything other than City of Atlanta money, because that would give the actual compliance officers and investigators more of a dedication to an independent.
I agree. So for years, unsuccessfully, I've been trying to offer a proposal for our auditor, which is independent, and the ethics officer that is independent at this point, to be able to get a percentage of the city budget set in, so when the budget time comes, they're not dependent on sort of begging the mayor or begging council for the resources that they need to do their job. It hadn't gone anywhere. However, I'm understanding, as I said, this is what's on the table now from the lead sponsor, Ms. Ide, that she's looking at including that scenario where it would be a blanket, you'll get so much of the, and it does have, I think for legal reasons too, it needs to be city funded, the city budget, so that they feel more free and independent in terms of operating their office and not having to rely on the very people that have to approve their budgets. So I hope that addresses your concerns. Anyone else?
Good morning.
Good morning.
And this question is, well, first of all, good morning, Chair and committee members. This question, and I'm Mr. Hopkins, Michael Hopkins, NPUX Chair. On page 3, the best practices in other cities. So I see here is the State of Georgia Senate Bill 269, implementing an inspector general for the city of Atlanta. So what is the bill's 269, and what would that inspector general do?
I'll let policy
Janelle Casanova, Office of the City Council President. This was a bill that was sponsored by former Senator Vincent Ford. And we looked at incorporating this into our compliance officer legislation, but this is more of investigative actions after the fact, and we were looking at having reviews being done before, trainings and all of that. So we wanted to take that investigative piece and put it in there, but also have more of a open review for everything and not just wait until things are done and investigate.
And the legislation didn't establish the inspector general, wasn't it asking the city to do it?
It was asking the city, so it didn't establish it, but we looked at that also.
So we've incorporated some of these functions in there, so this didn't establish it, it was him asking the city to establish it. So we are sort of complying with that by including it as a part of this whole compliance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I would like to thank you for your time and your efforts in informing us on what was going on with this. And again, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Just again, Monday in Committee on Council, we will be dealing with the piece that Ms. Overstreet introduced about the task force, and that will go to the full council on Monday. And we're anticipating and hopeful that the next following week after that at committee, which is the Finance Executive Committee that meets Wednesday at 1 o'clock, that we will be ready to move forward with the substitute on this legislation. Thank you.